Step number 5. Consistency is key. You should know by now what strategies you are going to implement, and you should have begun using them. Now you need to keep track of how the strategies are working, so that you can continue using them, tweak them, or try something different if you need to. Make sure that you are using these strategies with your child whenever and wherever the behavior typically occurs or could occur. If you decide that your child needs to use sensory fidgets to avoid having behaviors, for example, you shouldn't just be doing that at home or at school. Just like we talked about with the goals, you need to have consistency and you need to use the goals in all settings. You also need to use the resources in all settings. The child should have access to those fidgets at home, at school, and in the community wherever he goes, because those fidgets are a tool that he needs to learn to use to manage his emotions and prevent getting overstimulated. If you don't have him use the tool in any setting where the behavior could occur, he won't use it when he needs it, and he definitely won't use it effectively. The strategy has to become a part of his way of life and coping as well, or it won't be helpful. So, in order to make sure the strategies and resources are actually being used in all settings, the key is frequent and open communication between everyone who works with the child. If the child goes to school, participates in sports or clubs, has church activities, goes to his grandparents frequently, has a babysitter, all these individuals who work with the child should know about this resource and should know how it can be implemented properly to stop and prevent the behaviors. Even if you don't think that your child experiences the same behavioral issues at home as at school, or vice versa, you still need to follow the plan to address the behavior no matter where it occurs. If you don't address it, you will still see those behaviors carry over into multiple settings. Very rarely have I ever seen a child who truly only struggles with behavior in one setting. I've seen children who are typically more comfortable at home, and that makes sense because they don't have as much structure typically, and they don't have to be asked to do academic work. But those children still eventually experience behavior, even if it's in a different form. This happens because children truly need consistency. They can't be expected to follow a certain schedule and plan at school and have a completely different one at home. This doesn't mean that you have to make your child sit down at home and do schoolwork all evening. But what it means is that if your child follows a schedule at school, he should also follow a schedule at home too. Just one that has more home activities like eating a snack, doing homework, eating dinner, watching TV, or playing video games. I'm extremely passionate about this aspect of behavior because I have seen how it severely impacts child success, and it is devastating. I have personally known children who were making great academic strides as well as behavioral strides, but were doing nothing to address their behavior at home and had no similarity between their home life and their school life. They had no school routine that was implemented at home. What happened eventually was that the school performance dropped and the behavior worsened, and it did the same thing at home. Even though there was no structure or similarity between the school routines and the home routines, that still happened. You need to decide as a team of individuals who work with the child what behaviors you're going to address and agree to work on those together, each doing your own part to help the child succeed. Otherwise, he won't. Woohoo! You made it! The last step in this training. Step number 6 is called Re-Evaluate the Behavior Regularly. Much of understanding behavior and eliminating it is all about telling yourself the same things over and over again. So that is why you're probably thinking that you've heard me say this before or at least something similar. But it needs to be repeated again. Get comfortable with the strategies you are using, but don't think that is the end of your journey with behavior or that it will go away that easily. Addressing behavior takes consistency and regular evaluation of the behavior, the child, and yourself. This is where some people have a very hard time. Believe it or not, behavior is not all the child's fault. There are many outside factors, including disabilities, environmental circumstances, and also the person executing the strategy that can contribute to the improvement of a behavior or the worsening of a behavior. Many times when we use a strategy and we are still not seeing results, we ask why nothing is changing. And when we step back and look at the situation and the behaviors that are still continuing, we usually discover that something has not been executed properly. And who does that fall on? Us. I'm not saying that you're doing something wrong, but I'm just suggesting that there may be areas where you can improve. And I know it's difficult and frustrating to hear this sometimes because we're doing our best to help our children. But just remember that feedback can be used for positive growth. I remember several occurrences where I had to be corrected by a behavior therapist. She, of course, did it in a gentle way, which I appreciated, but she did make several notes during her observations that indicated things that I didn't do correctly when I was addressing behaviors. Now, I could have gotten defensive and upset with her, but why would I need to do that? She was simply the professional looking at the situation from an objective standpoint, and she gave me the feedback that I could either choose to use for growth and help my student, or I could just blow it off and choose to not follow her advice. When it comes to behavior, we may not have control over our students or our children as much as we would like, but we do have control over ourselves. So don't allow your pride and your personal feelings to get in the way of helping a child succeed. Instead, use that critique and that criticism to help you grow. I worked so hard when I was critiqued that the next time she didn't say anything negative about my performance during the situation. Instead, she complimented me on the way that I handled it. So be willing to accept feedback, not only that, but be willing to ask others for their feedback. Ask others who have seen the behavior and have seen you address it, because it can be very difficult to tell if you aren't executing a strategy properly, if you're the one who's with the child by yourself. This feedback could come from a spouse, a paraprofessional, a classroom assistant, or your other children, and there are so many other people. If you have the possibility of getting others' feedback, seek it and accept it for the sake of your child. If you don't have that option, however, that's okay. You just need to try to be as objective as possible about your child's behavior and how you've handled it. Ask yourself if you actually used the strategy correctly. Did you use the right strategy? And were there any ways that you could have used it better? Is there anything else you could have done that might have contributed to the behavior? I hope you answer these questions and discover that you did nothing wrong and you executed the behavioral strategy perfectly. I hope the behavior was stopped, or even better, that you never experience the behavior again. But at the end of the day, just remember to be consistent and to evaluate yourselves and your behavior concerns regularly. It has been my pleasure to share with you information about behavior and how we can address it. Thank you so much for listening to this audio series. I hope you found this information to be as valuable as I have. It has seriously been eye-opening and life-changing for me. I know it may seem overwhelming at first, but I hope you can see that you don't have to let all the information overwhelm you. And you definitely don't have to get burnt out. Understanding and addressing behavior is simply just a process. And when you break it down and begin applying simple parts of it, one at a time, you don't have to feel overwhelmed. Even just one change in the way you handle behavior can make a world of difference for you and a child. At the end of the day, never give up on a child, yourself, or your success together. Before you leave, I want to remind you to check out my website, exceptionallyerin.com, where you can contact me if you found this training to be helpful, and if you would like more in-depth training on behavior or one-on-one consultations. There is so much more specific and valuable information that I would love to share with you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.